I've done a total 180 on my perception of new media. I used to be of the belief that virtually everybody in new media, you could take them at face value. They're honest actors. You might disagree with them, but they mean what they say, etc. Now I'm the exact opposite. I think virtually everybody in new media is a fucking liar. They're a dishonest hack, or they're paid to spew the opinions that they spew. And just to give an example, we were talking about Trump's scam meme coin. Demi Jor was defending Trump's first day executive orders. He literally did a segment where he was like, "The glorious Trump has saved the whales." Because he went after windmill. I was like, this is like an AI parody of what Jimmy Dore was going to become, right? I was like, you really got nothing to say about the executive order that raised drug prices. You got nothing to say about the executive order that laid the groundwork for war with Mexico. You got nothing to say about the executive order that increased corruption in Trump's cabinet, where he said, you guys can take bribes now. Nothing on any of that. So my question for you is, are you as black-pilled as I am on new media? Of course, we're black-pilled on mainstream media, but new media was a separate question. But now I'm like, motherfucker, I got a 7-front war going on. I got to go to war against all these motherfuckers because they're all completely and utterly full of shit and dishonest hacks, and many of them are just paid to spew their opinions.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And to your point about Demi, the dude brought on Roseanne Barr with the QAnon hat at a live show, and I'm just like, man, I thought his brain was cooked back in like
he's just outlasting us, guys.
No, so like, here's the thing about new media. I think that it has opened a lot of doors for better analysis. One example being Palestine. Like, you just can't see the analyses that Breaking Points or Secular Talk does on MSNBC. I mean, sometimes you do, right, to be fair, Chris Hayes, but that's really...
I swear these guys are still living in 2017. I mean, the idea that they do this for a living, and in 2025, they're all of a sudden realizing, oh my goodness, no media has all these problems. And even that they're realizing this now, they're still so far behind because they only getting a fraction of this, right? I mean, first of all, they think that this is a new change, that, you know, new media started great and now it's this way. No. There is no logical basis for why an unaccountable business model would result in better product. Imagine any other industry where you have no boss, there's no accountability, you could just do whatever. What other industry would that work? What if we did that with the police department, with electricians, with plumbers, with teachers? Everybody else has to have accountability. Right? Everybody else has a boss. You know, there's certain standards you have to follow. Here we have a bunch of random people with no training. They don't have any journalism training, understanding of how to compensate for bias and, you know, how to investigate a story and, you know, media literacy training. I mean, who's going to fire the Humanist Report? Who's going to fire Kyle? Who's going to fire Tim Pool? What logic would the basis be for them being better than mainstream media, who at least has some standards? Very low standards, but they have some standards at least. They got the FCC breathing down their neck. They have bosses. The hosts can be fired. The hosts are fired. They have certain standards. Like any one of these mainstream media networks, they have policies that they have to abide by in terms of journalistic rules that they follow. They're professionally trained. Now they violate the training for profit many times, but at least they have that skill set. These folks are just random people, right? So the way they excel, which interesting that he mentions this Gaza stuff, is on isolated stories where the mainstream narrative is sort of locked in a cage, right? Mainstream media, especially corporate media, is sort of locked in with corporate interests, right? And they also have this association with power, right? I think I remember, was it Cuomo? Friendly relationship with Biden and stuff like that. So with that comes conflicts of interest and certain bias, and this opens up opportunities for independent folks like Kyle to do a much better job on those particular topics. But the idea of what the Humanist Report is suggesting, like you know, the idea that new media would just naturally be better than world-class journalists that have the training, have the resources. I mean, they have entire teams of people, research people, legal teams. I mean, all this infrastructure. And I know many people listening to this, it's hard for you to process this. But the reason for that is because people like the Human Rights Report have been brainwashing you for years, telling you this cartoonish version of mainstream media. Mainstream media is evil and they're horrible. I mean, you're human. You've been hearing this for years. What is the impact on how you think? Right? And then me coming here saying something contrary to what you've been hearing. But you have to also think logically. I have recognized for years what these guys are just now realizing. Like, they are in 2017. I'm in like 2026. So the same person who was ahead of these guys on that, I'm telling you right now, their perception of mainstream media is cartoonish at best. They love to talk about CNN and MSNBC, which represent the burger and fries of mainstream. They're the worst. That's why it's good for content. That's why they keep talking about CNN and MSNBC. You notice they don't talk about ABC as much? Now, ABC News has problems as well, right? But ABC News has done amazing work on so many things. There's no way that these guys could ever compete. If you pay attention, many of these guys in new media have even said as much in terms of they have acknowledged excellent reporting that has come through these mainstream media outlets. And it's not just with, Hayes or people that they feel are more progressive. That's the ones they're going to point out like, oh, these guys do. Right, because it aligns with their ideology. But they have also pointed out like some of the wartime reporting where they've actually gone in on the ground and actually spoken to people on the ground. And they've done some really, really sort of, world-class reporting. I mean, they're world-class journalists, right? The fact that they've made very bad mistakes and there's definitely some systematic issues doesn't take away from the fact that these guys went to top schools. The stuff that they learned was stuff that, it's from the best of the best from generations, right? I mean, think about the idea that people with no training whatsoever would just overall just be better than the experts. I mean, it almost sounds like I'm talking about right-wing media folks with that mindset. There is definitely a value to independent media. We definitely have had some really good reporting, but this idea that it will be shocking, and I've seen so many videos, they've been shocked for years. They've been shocked for years. Like every once in a while, like, oh, I'm shocked that CNN actually said this, or I'm shocked that I mean, they've done so many videos. Like, how many times do you have to be shocked to realize that actually they do some good reporting? There's some big systematic problems, and in my view, I would represent as garbage, right? In terms of where they should be and where they need to be versus where they're at. But I also acknowledge that they do great reporting, right? But this guy in his own little bubble, so arrogant. I'm an independent guy. I'm doing the real media. Like, bro, he's done great reporting. Kyle has done great reporting. But I think their perceptions of their skills is greatly inflated, shall we say. Case in point, it's 2025 and they're just now realizing that independent media is a cesspool, right? 3 years ago, I recognized that the Democrats were probably going to lose the election, right? While I was saying that, Kyle Kulinski and others were saying, well, Joe Biden did greater than I expected. I'm surprised he did. Like, who gives a fuck about your expectations for Joe Biden? Your expectations is irrelevant. What matters is what the American people need versus what they got, right? That's where they were at, right? Exceeding expectations. Kyle was the most annoying with that stupid rhetoric. It is irrelevant what you expected from Joe Biden. It's all about the American people and their needs versus what they got. And what they got wasn't enough. The fact that it was historically great in some ways, irrelevant.
an exception to the rule, not like what you see common. But ultimately, new media is a cesspool. For every Kyle or Crystal, there's 10 Demi Doors. For every David Dole, there's 15 Joe Rogans. The problem is that like what made it good has kind of made it bad. And to show you what I mean, before it seemed awesome to have this direct connection to your audience, to where if you mess up, they can correct you. You can see the comments, you can see them grilling you. But that actually kind of became a double-edged sword, because now that's facilitated this audience capture where, you say something, you get praised for it. It kind of creates this feedback loop.
That's right.
And then can corner these pundits in certain ways. And, you want to ride the wave. It feels good to get views and clicks and to do well. So maybe you kind of become captured by the audience. And to show, like, anyone is susceptible to this. Like, back when I first started out, I was shitting on Democrats and Hillary Clinton incessantly. And I had built up a lot of right-wing followers. And then all of a sudden I do a video shitting on Pizzagate and, calling them stupid. And then I realized, wow, I got like majority dislikes, and something is going on here. Is my audience Pizzagators? Like, what am I doing? And I didn't realize that, like, I'd kind of cultivated this, right? By just shitting on Democrats and not contrasting enough with how bad Republicans were. I had created this situation where a lot of my audience were seemingly right-wingers, and they didn't care that I was criticizing Democrats from the left. They just cared that I was shitting on Democrats.
That's
right.
And at that point in time, I had to make a choice. Do I lean into that because that's my audience, or do I shun them? And the answer was, no, I had to shun them. Because even though I'm building an audience and I'm getting views and clicks, I'm not going to basically sell out my own principles to get claps. I don't give a shit. Like, why did I start doing this in the first place? And I think that a lot of people, they're gonna have moments like that, and it's gonna change them, right? They start as lefties, and then little by little, they realize, okay, I got pushback when I said this, I won't say that. And they start to self-censor.
I said it before, I'll say it again. When you have a bunch of random people who don't have a boss, don't have a manager, don't have a board, don't have some kind of, like, do these people even have like policies they follow? Or is it just like whatever they, I see something on Twitter and I have my instincts and I just get on camera and start saying stuff, right? I doubt many of them even have sat down and put together rules about how they report on things, right? What they report on, how they report on it, what they'll do before doing a video, right? I mean, if I have this perspective, am I gonna follow traditional journalist, strategies in terms of I'm going to research the counter narratives to make sure that my position is actually accurate and I'm covering it in the right way, as opposed to a lot of people who align with my ideology on Twitter and on YouTube are all sharing this same position, and I trust and respect these people, and it sounds about right, so I'm gonna go make a video and I'm gonna put out the same stuff they're putting out, right? Is that kind of the style of how they're putting their videos together, or do they have a more formal process? Once again, mainstream media would have a better process of how they do journalism. However, that process would be constrained by profit incentives, but those profit incentives are massively greater to an individual, right? You're an individual YouTuber competing in a space where a 15-year-old can start a channel overnight and be competing with you in a few months, right? The barrier to entry is so low. CNN doesn't have to worry about another CNN just popping up overnight, right? CNN is automatically on people's TVs via cable. These YouTubers don't have that, right? You can be great today, tomorrow, nobody knows who you are. Your channel can get deleted with no reason. You can't even get a reason from YouTube. No one's talking to you. I mean, it's very, very hostile environment, extremely competitive. You have all these people competing for eyeballs, trying to get attention. how on earth would this ever be a formula that would lead to a good product overall? As opposed to it ending up being a wild, wild west where people will do and say whatever gets them clicks, because if they don't get clicks, they can't eat. Mainstream media doesn't have that same level of threat. They don't need to get clicks to eat. These guys are multi-millionaires. They don't have to work for another day in their lives. So if it all falls apart, they're good. Can these YouTubers say the same thing? Or are they up against a wall trying to get clicks and naturally, as human beings, I mean, think about you guys that do other, no standard jobs. Think about you struggling to pay your bills and whatever it is you got going on in your life. Imagine if you could double or triple your salary just by being a little bit dishonest and maybe saying things a certain way, being a little slick and not necessarily overtly lying, but just doing a lot of little deceptive things and dishonest things. If you could do those things, which are, not illegal, and multiply your income by 3 or 4 times, how many of you wouldn't do it? The idea that these random people on YouTube wouldn't be susceptible to survival instincts, greed, and self-interest are absolutely absurd. And the fact that these people who do this for a living don't have the analytical skills to figure this out, when this is what they do for a living. You're in this business and you don't even know how it works. And even now, as you're realizing, like, oh my goodness, all this issue with new media, you still don't get it. But you're talking about, oh, things are this way now. It was always this way. It was always this way. Alex Jones, right? How long has Alex Jones been around? He is new media, right? There's been so many toxic people lying and this has been going on for over a decade. And in 2025, these two are like, oh, whoa, oh my goodness, I can't believe that humans act as humans do. It's just like, are you from this planet? Do you understand human nature? Do you understand greed? Do you understand how capitalism works? You guys are capitalists. You're running capitalist businesses. You critique capitalism all the time, and you make some good critiques most of the time, not always. And you don't understand the poison of capitalism, how it changes you and takes away your soul, right? In every other capitalistic industry, you guys get it, right? Like, for example, you get landlords, right? The idea that landlords without regulation would just do the right thing and wouldn't just try to boost up the rents as high as possible and do whatever it takes to line their pockets with more cash is absurd. So the idea that these new media folks are Jesus is the absolute most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Why would YouTubers behave any different than any other person in any other industry where you don't have a manager, you don't have a boss, you don't have regulations, you don't have anybody to be accountable to, and you can multiply your salary tremendously just by how you say things, what you choose to talk about? I mean, come on, it's just like, this is not, like, I'm not some genius or I'm so smart figuring this out. It's obvious, but yet they don't get it. So you have to ask yourselves, what else does Kyle not get? What else does Humanist Report not get? What else do people that you like in new media that, maybe they have really good coverage about Gaza or really good coverage about, capitalism or whatever, and you like that stuff. And a lot of their coverage in those things might be actually pretty good. But what about the other things that they're saying, right? What about the overall picture that they're presenting to you? For example, the ridiculously cartoonish view of mainstream media bad. Think about it.